Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second, y'all. Give me 1 second. Share this to the network. And we're going to tap into Instagram and then we'll be ready to go. There we go. All right. So welcome back. Thank you. Peace to the family. Peace, love, and light. We have a special program for you. This is our 67th installment. Today's ceremony, or today's sermon, should I say, is titled Rumors of War. And peace to the family, peace, love, and light. Welcome back. Yeah, hoodie season began, he said. Yeah, hoodie season is definitely on its way.
I'm out here in the cheese state right now.
Oh, I know it's hoodie season out there.
It get crazy quick too. It was just like it was top of the sun type shit. Then next thing you know, boom.
Literally.
Like hold up, man.
Literally the other day it was like 80 degrees outside. You know what I'm saying? And it happens sudden and it happens swift. You know, just like war. It go from rumors of war to all out war. So we are definitely we're definitely in the precipice. You know what I'm saying?
Indeed.
We have done a lot of preparation on Sunday speaking about the state of Israel or the people of Israel or the children of Israel being in war, being in a perpetual state of war. We have attempted many ways to explain this in a historical sense, and we have done a lot even to bring it up to an updated sense of where we can observe and see ourselves. There's a lot of things taking place right now. There's a lot of overlapping narratives. There's a lot of things to put into perspective. And I'll just give a little bit of history, you know, before we jump into this, because it's deep. There's a lot going on. This time last year, on the date of October 3rd, is when the Kanye West situation started, right? He was at a fashion show in Paris and had a White Lives Matter shirt on. So that was like the first phase of his controversy, you know. And then later on, it matriculates into his diatribe about the quote unquote the Jewish people. And then we find ourselves here a year later, when we're able to bear witness to what's, you know, what considerably can be a very unprecedented event in our historical record. You know what I mean? If things play out the way that they look like they're gonna play out. But then that incident also is setting precedent. So we gotta take a look at that. This is a echo from 50 years ago, almost to the day. October 6th, 1973 is when they had the first quote unquote what they call the Yom Kippur War, right? And the Yom Kippur War was launched as a surprise attack by Egypt and Syria, right? And they set it on Israel 50 years ago, almost to the day that this incident just took place. And what we saw yesterday was the 22nd anniversary of America running up in Afghanistan. Okay. And all of these incidents have echoes of the return of an escalation on this planet that could very well lead to what's considered to be world war, because the majority of the things that we're bearing witness to are proxy wars being fought by other entities and other parties. Just as when we read the Bible and we go through these ancient narratives of Israeli wars, we can also see that there were entities behind the veil that were, their hands must have been at play. If the accusation of the God in the Bible, Jehovah in the Old Testament, was always that, I'm getting a lot of feedback. If the accusations was always that the children of Israel were falling out of favor from the Most High, that means that there must have been a whole nother energy, in the background that was moving the pieces on the board, whether they were succumbing to the lower manifestations of jealousy or envy or arrogance, you know what I'm saying, or idol worship, all of these things that they've been accused of. And he used that as a reason to, uh, quote unquote, attack them. Then, give me 1 second. Uh, then we know that there was a whole nother energy. We know that there was a whole nother energy that had his hands in the actual doings of, taking these people off the path and putting them in the pathway of retribution, right? Because they always get squashed, they always get stepped on, but they was getting stepped on by their own creator to put them back into, quote unquote, what's considered to be balance, right? And we are in a season of balance. We are in Libra season, and we see that the tails are starting to tip. The scales were always in the favor of Israel. They have a multi-billion-dollar security apparatus for force, and we're speaking about what's considered to be Israel of today. You know what I'm saying? So the Israel of today has been dependent and contingent on, you know, a lot of different security, and also being under the protectorate of the United States in particular. But there's other people on the planet that always come to the rescue of the Israelis. And then yesterday we saw that, you know, that $1 billion apparatus got penetrated, right, by what's considered to be low scale guerrilla warfare. And they were able to penetrate from land, air, and water. And that's law. You understand? That's law within itself. So we're looking at something that's very unprecedented in our timeline, right? For my entire life, the years of my presence and existence here on this planet, almost every year in the news there was stories about the Middle East. There was always kicking up dust in the Middle East, right? And we were forced to understand what it was about because it was always dominating our news feeds and what have you. Back in the days, they was always interrupting the nightly news, speaking about skirmishes in the Middle East between the Palestinians. We grew up with the PLO. We know who Arafat is. You know what I'm saying? We know the whole narrative, right? But we've never seen anything like this where they've been embarrassed. They caught them with their drawers down. And for the quote unquote the Jewish people, or the Israelis for that matter, this has a lot of historical implications, because these are people that are always concerned about being wiped off the face of the map. These are always the people who are concerned with annihilation. These are always the people who are concerned with, being ethnically cleansed and all of these things. So these echoes go a little bit deeper. But what I also want to speak about before we get into today's dissertation, because we have been expertly preparing one another for these conversations every Sunday that we've been meeting, is that the real reason that this thing got set off is because they was attempting to do a goat sacrifice at the Temple Mount. Now, we have been repeatedly speaking about the Levites and the Leviticus priesthood, especially that you find in the Old Testament, and they dealt with animal sacrifice. So in order for the Jewish people or the Israelis that are still holding form to old traditions, right? These are people that come under Torah. They don't come under the Christian Bible. So they still participate and practice the ways of old, okay, to maintain that integrity, especially the people who have taken on an identity that are not necessarily organically theirs. These are the ones that you find that are going to be following certain dictates, certain customs and traditions almost to the T, because it's the very thing that identifies them. It's the very thing that gives them an identity that they're not willing to part with. This is what gives them their cosmic cover. So they wanted to sacrifice a goat at the Temple Mount, and the Temple Mount is a sacred site in all Abrahamic religions because it's shared by all three of them. So it's agreed upon that you don't do anything that's going to offset another quote unquote tradition or religion at the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount is supposed to be neutral grounds. The Israelis have been attempting to push the quote unquote Muslims out of the Temple Mount because they want to build the third temple on the Temple Mount. And the third temple goes into Solomon. That's the third temple, right? The first two was destroyed. This is the third one, and they're attempting to build it. These are the reasons why Trump is allowed to speak the way that he does about Israel, even if it's condemning them, because he made the initial moves to start the construction on the third temple mount by moving the uh, the UN consulate, I believe, to Jerusalem. He did a lot of things that was considered to be aggressive, right? Tipping the scales and leaning in the favor of the Israelis' argument about their right to settlement of that particular land. Okay. So he tips the scales somewhat. And he feels that because he tipped the scales and because he showed his hand about who he's favoring, that they should never be a section of a sect of people who are not in compliance with his attempts to get reelection and things of that nature. So this is some of the background history as to what we're speaking about, right? This very still obvious and active, right? This obvious and active um, participation in ceremony and ritual that they still engage in. I told you, living in Brooklyn, living near Eastern Parkway, you know that they engage in animal sacrifice because they do it outside in front of everybody, right? They bring whole trucks full of chicken to Eastern Parkway and they have a ceremonial ritual where they cleanse the body of all of the sins and they put it into the chicken, right? They do that in Eastern Parkway, sacrifice the chickens and leave them right there in the neighborhood. They don't even do the cleanup. So it's almost as if they're releasing those spirits into the neighborhood. And then we see the things happening to our youth that are described and identical that's in this book to speak about if you get that spell on you, if you get that curse on you, right? So let's jump in appropriately, right, into Genesis. In Genesis 10:7, if this is your first time tuning in, this is the Sunday service presented by Lion Gates Ministry in conjunction with Mineral Ministries, presented by Pope Pablo. We are non-denominational, mostly conversational, sometimes confrontational. In the way that we make our observations on scriptures, we align the scriptures with the Gregorian calendar date. So today is October the 8th. So we'll go into the book and we'll read chapter 10, verse 8, verse 7 or 8, because it's the whole, we cover the weekend, right? We'll even do 7, 8, and 9, or sometimes 6, 7, and 8. You feel me? Just to get a whole cohesive idea about what the energy or the temperature is as it aligns, as we align scripture with the Gregorian calendar date. Let's see if we can find some connections and some correlations, y'all. Let's go. So right off the breaks, we go into Genesis. In Genesis 10:7 is the Hamites. Okay. So this is the initial introductory story about the curse. A curse on a cursed people, a cursed seed, right? Let's see who these alleged cursed seeds are, quote unquote, in the Bible. The sons of Ham: Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Okay. So these are the children of Ham. These are the sons of Ham. We know what Cush is. Cush is the Sudan, right? Cushite regions. Cush is Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia. All of that is Cush. Mizraim is Kemet. Okay. Ancient Kemet. We know the Put is Libya. Okay. And Canaan. That one is still in the air, right? That one is still in the air because the Canaanite people, is it a land or is it a people? Do they take it with them wherever they go? Because they said that that's who we are over here, children of Canaanite or the lost ones. Cush was the father. Okay, the sons of Cush: Seba, Havala, Sapta, Rama, and Septeka, and the sons of Rama, Sheba, and Dedan. Cush was the father of Nimrod, who began to be a mighty one on the earth. So Nimrod is the mightiest warrior. Okay. Nimrod was considered to be the mightiest of warriors. He was washing shit up everywhere that he went. They feared Nimrod. All right. So this is the initial curse. These are the people allegedly, initially, they got the curse, right? These are the curse seeds. And you would imagine that the cursed people of the book, they would have identical ramifications of the people of the book that will also curse, which, interchangeably would be the Israelites, right? The children of Jerusalem, the people of Jerusalem. You feel me? This is what we read all through the book. So let's go to Exodus 10:7. This is the plague. This is another plague. This is dealing with the locusts. I feel like we read this last week, but it keeps popping up. So this is when they were putting a curse on the Kemetic people, on the Comitian people. So one would have to ask, according to the genealogy, right? For the sons of Ham, they say it's Cush and Mizraim and Put. Did this curse get put on the people prior? Did the curse of Ham, for genealogy and timeline purposes, did the curse of Ham or the curse of Canaan get put on the people before the quote unquote Hebrews went into Kemet? And ultimately the Comitian people ends up getting cursed to let the Hebraic or the Judaic, or, you know what I'm saying, the children of Israel go, right? Because there's a lot of curses getting thrown around. The eighth plague is locusts. They will fill your houses and the houses of all of your officials and every Egyptian, something neither your fathers nor your grandfathers have seen since the day they came into this land. Then Moses turned and left Pharaoh's presence. Pharaoh's officials asked him, how long will this man be a snare to us? Let the people go so that they may worship the Lord their God. Do you not realize that Egypt is in ruins? So Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh. Go worship the Lord your God, he said, but who exactly will go? And then go on. So we see this, right? We see this ancient reference to an accursed people who utilized prayers to their God to curse people, and those people had to let those people go, right? Only to run back into them later on in the timeline repetitively and repeatedly, all the way up until 1973, when these same Egyptians, no, let me correct that, not these same Egyptians, by name only, right? So other people have occupied this region, just like other people occupied Palestine's region, or what they call Israel today. Other people have occupied that, and they have taken on the name and the character of an ancient people and still put themselves into prophecy. Because just like these quote unquote people of old who were in conflict continuously, These same people in the modern day era have been in conflict repeatedly. So 50 years ago, it was the Egyptians of today who invade Israel of today and castigate those people only to be beat back by those people, right? Who allegedly initially had the inferior military, but they whooped on the Egyptians and they pushed them back, okay? And then they started their conquest of these particular settlements, of which 50 years later, right, the pressure from that is informing and forcing the people of that region to push back. Yes, that was the Ptolemies, of course. So even with the level of pushback that you see today, please be mindful and you know, keep an open eye open for the melanated Palestinians, right? Yes, war was definitely waged on a full moon. Okay. So we look at the plagues. All right, let's go to Leviticus, the sins of Nadab and Abihu. Then Moses said to Aaron and his sons, Eleazar and Ithamar, do not let your hair become disheveled, and do not tear your garments, or else you will die. And the Lord will be angry with the whole congregation. But your brothers, the whole house of Israel, may mourn on account of the fire that the Lord has ignited. You shall not go outside the entrance of the tent of meetings, or you will die, for the Lord's anointing oil is on you. So they did as Moses instructed. So once again, we have to revisit these ancient customs that are popping up in our modern day historical records, right? The reason that they wanted also to perform this level of goat sacrifice recently at the Temple Mount is because this ties into one of their traditional sacrifice ceremonies. And one of the mainstays of the sacrifice ceremonies would be Passover, right? Where they're sacrificing the lamb and they're putting lamb's blood over the door entrances of Israel, you know, Israeli people. So the plague, right? In the plague, this particular plague, which was sent from God himself or from Jehovah, quote unquote, was the plague of the killing of the firstborn, right? So Passover is for them to put the blood on the cover of the door, okay, so they can protect the household from the Passover. And the Passover is death passing through a particular city, taking the firstborn sons from the house. So this repetitive blood ceremony, blood ritual, blood sacrifice, okay, these are the things that they're saying, look, maybe our Arab brethren don't deal with this, maybe our Christian brethren don't deal with this, so we cannot practice these particular ceremonies in a place that's considered to be a cosmopolitan capital such as Tel Aviv, I believe, right? Or wherever the Temple of Mount is located. That's supposed to be a neutral zone. But these same ceremonies are continuously showing up. They're repeating themselves and they're making people go to war because everybody does not prescribe to these particular ceremonies and they take offense to them. Right? Because it's a reminder of the magic. Okay, all of this is magic. If they said God put the anointing oil on him, the crystals oil on him, right? They said, you shall not go outside the entrance to the tent of meetings, or you will die, for the Lord's anointing oil is on you. Okay. Let's go to Numbers 10:7. These are the same sons, also Aaron's sons. They end up getting killed later on in this chapter. Okay, by God. The two silver trumpets. I feel like we read this last week, but let's get it. When you sound a short blast, a second time, the camps that lie on the south side are to set out. The blasts are to signal them to set out. To convene the assembly, you are to sound long blasts, not short ones. The sons of Aaron, the priests, are to sound the trumpets. This shall be a permanent statute for you in the generations to come, right? So this is almost like the blowing of the ram, the sounding of the trumpets, right? The things that are needed for them to signal war. Let's go to a cross reference. This is Joel 2:1. Blow the ram's horn in Zion, sound the alarm on my holy mountain. Let all who dwell in the land tremble, for the day of the Lord is coming. Indeed, it is near. Okay. Deuteronomy 10:7. The new tablets of stone. The Israelites traveled from Beroth ben Jachin to Mozarah, where Aaron died and was buried, and Eleazar, his son, succeeded him as priest. From there, they traveled to Gudgodoah, and from Gudgodah to Japhbathah, a land with streams of water. At that time, the Lord set apart the tribe of Levi to carry the ark of the covenant of the Lord, to stand before the Lord, to serve him, and to pronounce blessings in his names, as they do to this day. Right? Let's go to Joshua 10:8. The day the sun stood still. So Joshua and his whole army, including all the mighty men of valor, came from Gilgal. The Lord said to Joshua, do not be afraid of them, for I have delivered them into your hands. Not one of them shall stand against you. After marching all night from Gilgal, Joshua caught them by surprise. Let's go to Deuteronomy 7:24. So what has been promised from modern day Israel, right? From the people who are occupying that region, from the people who have what's the word I'm looking for? For the people who have taken on that particular identity, right? For the people who are flying that flag, the leader of those people, their prime minister, Netanyahu, said that the transgressors are going to experience a vengeance unlike anything that they've ever seen, right? So they're speaking about wiping them off of the face of the earth. Okay, let's go to a cross reference here in this book, Deuteronomy 7:24. He will hand their kings over to you, and you will wipe out their names from under heaven. No one will be able to stand against you. You will annihilate them. So I'm just saying that to say that there's a lot of precedence, right, for the mayhem that you're about to see. There's a lot of precedence for how they engage in the warfare. We take, we take great exception to it because our timelines get lit with babies with their brains blown out every time something happens in Palestine. And for some odd reason, that shit is not filtered on your timeline, right? Nobody else can show that. You feel me? But when conflicts pop off in the Gaza region, you always start seeing dead babies, right? Utterly destroyed, heads smashed, brains out and everything. So, don't think that you're going to see anything different with this engagement. And I pray that it doesn't get to those horrendous levels. You know what I'm saying? I really do. But these people are hell bent on revenge at this point because they caught her with their drawers down and they embarrassed them. Judges 10:8. Philistine and Ammonite oppression. So the anger of the Lord burnt against Israel, and he sold them into the hands of the Philistines and Ammonites, who that very year harassed and oppressed the Israelites, and did so for 18 years to all of the Israelites on the other side of the Jordan in Gilead, the land of the Amorites. The Ammonites also crossed the Jordan to fight against Judah, Benjamin, and the house of Ephraim, and Israel was in deep distress. right? So we see this repetitively in our review of scripture, that God is continuously doing something to his own children, to the people of Israel. He's selling them into slavery. He's handing them over, to other nations. And then he has to come back once they gain their equilibrium, right? And they're in homage to him, and they're in praise and worship once again. Then he comes back and vanquishes their enemies. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like he's playing games. He's playing chess with people, to get to his own children, to get the love and respect that every father wants and needs from their children, right? 1 Samuel 10:8. Samuel anoints Saul, and this is King Saul. This is not the same Saul who becomes Paul. When these signs have come, do as the occasion demands, for God is with you, and you shall go before me to Gilgal, and surely I will come to you to offer burnt offerings and to sacrifice peace offerings. Wait 7 days until I come to you and show you what you are to do. Right? Let's do a cross reference for this. All right, the cross reference for this is Leviticus 3:9. And from the peace offerings he shall bring an offering made by fire to the Lord, consisting of his fat, the entire fat tail cut off close to the backbone, the fat that covers the entrails, all the fat that is on them. Right. So again, repetitive evidence that, we're speaking about a people who are heavily engaged in animal sacrifice, burnt animal sacrifice, blood animal sacrifice. Um, yeah, and that's just what it is. And that holding on to those customs and traditions, right, very well can have been the impetus and the reason that has led into this latest skirmish. Because just last week, it was 10-3 or 10-5. There was a big escalation at the Temple Mount when some Israeli settlers were attempting to sacrifice a goat at the Temple Mount for one of their ceremonies. I don't think it was necessarily for Yom Kippur, but it was something connected to that. And this blood that they were sacrificing was a consecrated blood that was utilized to protect, children and people against death or something to that nature. Right? It was in line for the most part with the same ancient traditional ceremonies that we're speaking about, that we're reading about in scripture right now. 2 Samuel's 10:7. David messengers disgraced. When the Ammonites realized that they had become a stench to David, they hired 20,000 Aramean foot soldiers from Beth Rahab and Zobah, as well as 1,000 men from the king of Makkah and 12,000 men from Tob. On hearing this, David sent Joab and the entire army of mighty men. The Ammonites marched out and arrayed themselves for battle at the entrance of the city gate, while the Arameans of Zobah and Rehab and the men of Tob and Makkah were by themselves in the open country. Um, so again, the book seems like especially the Old Testament, it's like a historical record of wars, and in between the wars is, the sobering up of the people, even either post-war, mainly post-war, because prior to the war they're very pompous. They don't see a need for them to practice in ceremonies the same way, or hold true to their commandments or their covenant. Right? They're enjoying folly, they're living life, and then comes war to remind them of the promise of death, and then destruction. Things can be taken from underneath them, and then they fall back into ceremonial worship. And that seems to be like where the God of their Bible seems to want them at all times. 1 Kings 10:7, the Queen of Sheba, right back to Egypt they go. She said to the king, "The report I heard in my own country about your words and wisdom is true, but I did not believe these things until I came and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half was told to me. Your wisdom and prosperity have far exceeded the reports I heard. How blessed are your men! How blessed are these servants of yours who stand continually before you and hear your wisdom, right? So either she was finessing him or she was wide open. 2 Kings 10:7. Jehu slaughters Ahab's family. Then Jehu wrote them a second letter and said, if you are on my side and if you will obey me, then bring the heads of your master's sons to me at Jezreel by this time tomorrow. Now the sons of the king, 70 in all, were being brought up by the leading men of the city. And when the letter arrived, they took the sons of the king and slaughtered all 70 of them. They put their heads in baskets and sent them to Jehu at Jezreel. When the messenger arrived, he told Jehu, they have brought the heads of the sons of the kings. And Jehu ordered, pile them in 2 heaps at the entrance of the gate until morning. 1 Chronicles 10:7. The Philistines possessed the towns. When all of the Israelites in the valley saw that the army had fled and that Saul and his sons had died, they abandoned their cities and ran away. So the Philistines came and occupied their cities. The next day, when the Philistines came to strip the dead, they found Saul and his sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. Now, it's interesting. This morning, I found an article that they just put out saying that they was able to prove that the Philistines came from the Greek, right? And this was like in one of my science journals that I normally read. So they got all of the scientific proof. And they went and they spoke about the Philistines. They was like, these are the legendary foes in the Bible of the Israeli people, of the Israelites. As I tell you, these are the same people that Goliath comes from, the giant, right? Comes from the Philistines. These were northern invaders. You know what I'm saying? But some records tell it different. One of my teachers explained that the Philistines were actually melanated people. And he explains the connections in the genealogy. I don't remember everything to the T today. But nonetheless, I find it interesting that they would start unearthing some of these stories. Again, in a celebration of a people who we have historically known since the beginning of their time to always have been at war at one point in time or another. Let's go to 2 Chronicles 10:8, right? They replied, if you will be kind to these people and please them by speaking kind words to them, they will be your servants forever. But Rehoboam rejected the advice of the elders. Instead, he consulted the young men who had grown up with him and served him. He asked them, what message do you advise that we send back to these people who have spoken to me, saying, lighten the yoke your father put on us? Let's go to Ezra 10:8. The people's confession of sin. And a proclamation was issued throughout Judah and Jerusalem that the exiles should gather at Jerusalem. Whoever failed to appear within 3 days will forfeit all his property, according to the counsel of the leaders and elders, and would himself be expelled from the assembly of the exiles. So within the 3 days, all the men of Judah and Benjamin assembled in Jerusalem, and on the 20th day of the 9th month, all of the people sat in the square at the house of God, trembling regarding this matter, and because of the heavy rain. Let's go to Job 10:8. Okay. Job's plea to God. Though you know that I am not guilty and there is no deliverance from your hand shaped me and altogether formed me. Would you now turn and destroy me? Please remember that you molded me like clay. Would you now return me to dust? Right? So Job, and he's doing like in battle rap, they be like, yo, he's talking to him. That's what Job be doing and shit, right? Job be battle rapping God. Psalms 10:8, right? The perils of the pilgrim. It also felt like we read this last week. His mouth is full of cursing, deceit, and violence. Trouble and malice are under his tongue. He lies in wait near the villages. In ambush, he slays the innocent. His eyes watch in stealth for the helpless. He lies in wait like a lion in the thicket. He lurks to seize the oppressed. He catches the lowly in his net. Now, this Psalms sounds like what took place yesterday, right? In the border villages of Israel, who the settlers of the West Bank always felt was impenetrable because they have a border wall, just like they are proposing to do in Mexico, right? Even though we see thousands and thousands of people crossing the border into this quote unquote country, right? If there was actual border security or border patrol or border control, right, those numbers would be decreased exponentially. So they do the same thing in Israel, right? They go through great means to pain the people of Palestine when they have to cross over into Israel to do work, right? They give them a lot of slack at the border crossings. So the people that are in the occupied territories have always felt very comfortable because these are militarized zones and people don't just slip into militarized zones. You feel me? Yesterday though, um those militarized zones were breached for the first time ever, and they were breached in a way in which was unprecedented because once again, like I said, they breached them from land, air, and water, right? And they set a precedent. These occupying forces have billions and billions of dollars invested in security. They have all of the technological advances in the world, right? They're the leaders almost in AI for the most part, and all sorts of other things, but none of that stuff worked apparently yesterday, um, when these border towns were breached and they were laying in wait and they were killing people going door to door. Those people did not have the blood of the lamb over their doors like they would normally perform during Passover. And I'm not saying that in jest. Please don't take that the wrong way. I'm not condoning any violence. Um, I'm just saying that these echoes, these rumors of wars are echoes of wars of past, right? Because it's almost repetitive when you occupy a place in a space and you take on the identity of a people. You almost are connected to their historical legacy. You feel me? Almost to the degree where now you have to make contributions to that chapter of that narrative. And these people who have occupied these territories in these regions and who have taken on the identity of ancient peoples who once occupied these regions that did not look anything like the current present day occupiers, those people have also taken on those narratives, right? Or the repercussions of taking on the narrative, because that narrative comes with a trajectory of a storyline that is always playing itself out. Okay. So I'll read this again. This is Psalms 10:8. And it's called the perils of the pilgrim. The pilgrims are the settlers, right? Just like the pilgrims over here were the settlers. They were the colonists. Okay, they were the settlers. They were people who came from afar into a land that is not their home necessarily and set homes up. So the perils of the pilgrim. His mouth is full of cursing, deceit, and violence. Trouble and malice are under his tongue. He lies in wait near the villages. In ambush, he slays the innocent. His eyes watch in stealth for the helpless. He lies in wait like a lion in the thicket. He lurks to seize the oppressed. He catches the lowly in his net. So we're speaking about occupying forces running down on occupying forces because the pale-faced Arabs of that particular regions are not the original occupants of that region either. If you look at footage, you're going to see melanated, quote unquote, Palestinians, right? In this particular conflict, for whatever reason, they're putting them on TV. But you can also do your research. You can also speak to anybody who has been to Afghanistan and anybody who has been to Iraq. You can speak to these people who went to the war that started 22 years ago yesterday. And you can ask them, did you see melanated people in those regions? Right? What is the story? What is the narrative? Did they tell you? because that's our people. That's where we come from. Shout out to the brother Wesley Muhammad for his research, in particular on Black Arabia. Right? He laid that history out. These stories are available. These books are, they're out there. You can get them. Let's go to Proverbs 10:7. Solomon's Proverbs, the wise son. Blessings are on the head of the righteous, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. The memory of the righteous is a blessing, but the name of the wicked will rot. A wise heart will receive commandments, but foolish lips will come to ruin. That's pretty cut and dry. You know what I'm saying? That's a powerful one. Proverbs 10:7, or this is 10:6 to 10:8, right? Solomon's Proverbs, the wise son. Blessings are on the head of the righteous, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. The memory of the righteous is a blessing, but the name of the wicked will rot. A wise heart will receive commandments, but foolish lips will come to ruin. Ecclesiastes 10:8, wisdom and folly. I have seen slaves on horseback, while princes go on foot like slaves. He who digs a pit may fall into it, and he who breaches a wall may be bitten by a snake. The one who quarries stones may be injured by them, and he who splits logs endangers himself. Right? So, he who breaches a wall may be bitten by a snake. That's very telling, right? There's going to be a great price to pay for the sneak attack that Hamas has enacted on Israel. They're going to lose a lot of the protection that they have received from the global community in regards to saying, yo, that's enough. You know what I'm saying? Oh, yeah, y'all need to do a ceasefire. There's not going to be a lot of that discretion that's going to be exhibited this time around. They're even going to advocate them wiping them off of the face of the earth, right? Annihilating them as enemies, quote unquote. The narrative that Israel runs with anytime that they feel that they're being attacked, let alone if there's anti-Semitism involved. You know what I'm saying? They feel like their the longevity and their legacy and everything else is threatened, and they use that as an excuse to cleanse, right? So he who breaches a wall may be bitten by a snake. You know, these people got to realize whether they whether this was a plan all along. Were they playing into a plan? Because all of a sudden this unifies Israel. Israel has been divided in political turmoil, just like the U.S. for quite some time, but it has hit a precipice. And what's at the center of the turmoil or the division in Israel is the Supreme Court, right? Their Supreme Court and the powers that Netanyahu was attempting to wrestle from the Supreme Court. These administration is ultra conservative. They're ultra right wing. These are ultra war hawks. They have all of the pieces in place with the people who have been looking to unleash terror on their enemies for quite some time, right? And now they have their excuse. They have a unilateral excuse to do all of the debauchement that they have been prescribed to do based on all of the research and development that they've been doing into next age weaponry, space age weaponry, and things of that nature. So, again, I hope that there is some level of intervention and it doesn't reach that level. But we got to be very mindful, yes, that there's a illmatic game of chess being played, especially when they're running around saying this is their 9/11. That within itself is like, fam, do you know what your association with 9/11 was? I wouldn't make that comparison if I was you. Judgment on Assyria. This is Isaiah 10:8. But this is not his intention. This is not his plan. For in his heart to destroy and cut off many nations. For it is in his heart to destroy and cut off many nations. Are not all my commanders kings, he says. Is not Calno like Karchemish. Is not Hamath like Arpad. Is not Samaria like Damascus. Right? Jeremiah 10:7, the sovereignty of God. There is none like you, O Lord. You are great, and your name is mighty in power. Who would not fear you, O King of nations? This is your due. For among all the wise men of the nations and in all their kingdoms, there is none like you, but they are altogether senseless and foolish, instructed by worthless idols made of wood. Mm. Yeah. So yeah, and then it's worth noting that Hamas is not, you know, states go to war with states. States don't necessarily go to war. Just like the U.S. went to war with ISIS. That's not a state-sponsored terrorist organization. That's a stateless terrorist organization, right? It's very difficult for a nation or a state to go to war with something that's not another nation or another state. Hamas is not the state of Palestine. Palestine has not even achieved statehood. So you're speaking about a people who technically don't have a military. How are they going to defend themselves from military onslaught of this magnitude? And the global community is going to sit by and watch. The majority of the casualties that they're going to rack up at Palestine are civilian-based casualties, because the Gaza Strip is densely populated, right? And buildings are built on top of buildings and things of that nature. So we're looking at, I don't want any of us to acquiesce to justifiable homicide on this degree that we're going to be seeing, just because some people are in their feelings about faulty security, right? There's so many questions that are popping up. Let's go to a cross reference to this Jeremiah text, and the cross reference comes from 1 Corinthians 1:20. Where is the wise man? Where is the scribe? Where is the philosopher of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? What do we know? What do we know? You feel me? Has God not made foolish the wisdom of the world? Look, and I'll raise my hand and participate. We was cutting our phones off the other day, right? I wouldn't consider that foolishness. I would say, yo, we're at a place right now where we can't even trust our government. We're at a place right now where our skepticism is coming from the very same people who are responsible for our safety and security. That's a weird place to be. You know what I'm saying? We're at a place right now where we are the most technologically advanced, but idiocracy has set in. So what do you do with technological advance, things around people whose brains are, are going backwards and getting smaller and being used less? You know what I mean? What does it stand to benefit? How they be like, what does it stand to benefit to inherit the world and lose your soul? What does it stand to benefit to have so much technological advancement and to be subhuman at this point, where people are devolving into something that is unbecoming of us as a species, where there's no more foundation, there's no more moral ground to stand on? You feel me? These are the things, these are the dichotomies that are taking place simultaneously right now. Ezekiel 10:8, God's glory exits the temple. Then one of the cherubim reached out his hand and took some of the fire that was amongst them, and he put it into the hands of the man clothed in linen, who received it and went out. The cherubim appeared to have the form of human hands under their wings. Then I looked and saw 4 wheels besides the cherubim, 1 wheel besides each cherub, and the wheels gleamed like a beryl stone. Okay. Let's go to a cross reference for this. Let's go to Ezekiel's 1:8. And again, Ezekiel is having a dream, right? He's having a dream. We don't know if the dream is induced by a substance, right? But it sounds like it. Ezekiel 1:8. Under their wings, on their 4 sides, they had human hands. All 4 living creatures had faces and wings. Okay. Let's jump. Let's go to Daniel's 10:8. Daniel's vision by the Tigris, right? Tigris Euphrates, right? So let's go to Daniel's vision. He had another vision. Okay. Ezekiel has a vision. Daniel has a vision. Isaiah has a vision, right? Who else? Elijah has a vision. Only I, Daniel, saw the vision. The men with me did not see it, but a great terror fell upon them, and they ran and hid themselves. So I was left alone, gazing at this great vision. No strength remained in me. My face grew deathly pale, and I was powerless. I heard the sound of his words, and as I listened, I fell into a deep sleep with my face to the ground. Right? So only he saw the apparition. Only he saw the spirit. Only he saw the vision. You feel me? This was not something that was collectively seen by his team. Okay. Meaning that there are many of things that you are going to come across that only you see and only you interpret the way in which you were seeing them. You feel me? This is not the time to rely upon making observations of the world through somebody else's eyes, right? You got to make the observations. You got to be firm in your discernment, right? Because you can't, let alone trust the eyes of other people. It's going to be a challenge even to trust your own eyes with what's coming up. We live in a very illusionary world, and it's layers. Okay, let's go to Hosea 10:7. Retribution for Israel's sins. Yes, it will be carried to Assyria as tribute to the great king. Ephraim will be seized with shame. Israel will be ashamed of his wooden idols. Samaria will be carried off with her king like a twig on the surface of the water. The high places of Avon will be destroyed. It is the sin of Israel. Thorns and thistles will overgrow their altars. Then they will say to the mountains, cover us, and to the hills, fall on us. Yeah, as I mentioned, you know what I'm saying, this book is replete with either Israel being attacked for discretions against their own God or them siding with their God, you feel me, and attacking other nations. But nonetheless, there's definitely a precedence for Israel being at war. It's something that is continuously seen. Zechariah 10:7, Judah and Israel will be restored. And I will strengthen the house of Judah and save the house of Joseph. I will restore them because I have compassion on them, and they will be as though I had not rejected them. For I am the Lord their God, and I will answer them. Ephraim will be like a mighty man, and their hearts will be glad as with wine. Their children will see it and be joyful. Their hearts will rejoice in the Lord. I will whistle for them to gather, for I have redeemed them, and they will be as numerous as they once were. So you also have to understand what this means in terms of the safety and the security that people who come under this particular demonstration and indoctrination hold towards their homes, right? Their home is sacred. Their home is their temple. You feel me? Their home is their temple. And they have a lot of different ceremonial rites and rituals that they engage in to protect their homes from intrusion. So when there are people that are not only coming across and penetrating, the borders and the military zones, but they're going house to house, they said, and they were killing and kidnapping Israelis. Yes, this is something that's going to weigh heavily on the the morals, I mean, not so much the morals, but the mental stability of that entire country. That nation is going to be shooken, right? Because those people have been able to occupy territories freely, right? With the backing of military, as you feel me, as their assurance. So they have just been able to be free and frolic in other people's backyards, and now that's no longer a thing. So they're going to be shook. They're going to be scared. There's going to be a level of fear. And with fear, comes a lot of things, as we can see, right? Historically, through this book is speaking about that. Let's go to Matthew's 10:8, the ministry of the 12. And as you go, preach this message: the kingdom of heaven is near. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, drive out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. Do not carry any gold or silver or copper in your belts, right? So this is, they allege, or the nation of gods and earth is the first one to get hit with the accuse. I can't even say it's a slanderous title or accusation, because this is what they attest to themselves for being poor righteous teachers, right? But the disciples of quote unquote Jesus were also in a vow to be poor righteous teachers. So which one predates the other? If it's if it was good enough for disciples, is it not good enough for the other men? So why not all Christians who are attempting to be like Christ? If you're attempting to be like Christ and his disciples, you too should be poor righteous teachers. And that can be interpreted, many in different ways, in which, right, none of us can afford to be poor righteous teachers in this day and time. You know what I'm saying? But I think that what they're saying is that initially it should be a labor of love. And your recompense that you get for doing this comes from, you receive a spiritual escrow, more importantly, right? But make sure that you're taking care of your earthly affairs. You know what I'm saying? Because they would even put Jesus in a shelter these days. Let's go to Mark 10:7, teachings about divorce. However, from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh, right? So, you know, the two becomes one, and they say that the one becomes three, right? The two becomes one, and the one becomes three. You know, a man and a woman, they conjoin, and they conjoin in the union as one, and then they give birth to a child. Now it's three of them. You feel me? And then they call that Chinese mathematics or something like that. Luke 10:7, Jesus sends out the disciples. If a man of peace is there, your peace will rest on him. If not, it will return to you. Stay at the same house, eating and drinking whatever you are offered, for the worker is worthy of his wages. Do not move around from house to house. If you enter a town and they welcome you, eat whatever is set before you. Right? My mother used to tell me the same thing. You feel me? That is customary when you travel and go places. If you're offered the cuisine of that place and that's tradition, participate. You know what I'm saying? Participate as best as you can. I don't think I'm going eating chocolate covered cockroaches. I'm a protest, but I'm gonna do it in a peaceful way. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna try to talk crazy about them people, but I'm like, I ain't into chocolate covered cockroaches. We're not doing that. Whew. John 10:8. Jesus, the good shepherd. So he said to them again, truly, truly, I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me were thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. If anyone enters through me, he will be saved. He will come in and go out and find pasture. Right? He talking big. He's shitting on all his predecessors. He like, nah, I'm him. What you talking about? Right? So there go Jesus showing some ego. Acts 10:7. Cornelius sends for Peter. He is staying with Simon the tanner, whose house is by the sea. When the angel who spoke to him had gone, Cornelius called two of his servants and a devout soldier from amongst his attendants. Let's do a cross reference, right? Matthew's 2:13. All right. When the Magi had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Get up, he said, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him. I mean, where have we heard the story before? Right? The savior of the Jewish people getting a sign and being sent to Egypt, right? So they can hold it down while the firstborns are being killed. That's a remix of the Moses narrative that we heard to the T. And you went through straight all of them arms to get the people out of Egypt, only to return the savior of the world back to Egypt to get the lessons. Romans 10:8. The word brings salvation, right? Or who will descend into the abyss? That is to bring Christ up from the dead. But what does it say? The word is near you. It is in your mouth and in your heart. That is the word of faith we are proclaiming. That if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Okay. Yeah, that is open to all sorts of different interpretation. You feel me? You really have to consecrate your own personal understandings with your own personal beliefs. If you think that they're speaking about a physical man who died for your sin, but still you're still born in sin, who died for your sin, and not only are you still born in sin, but now you have to complete sentences if you commit a sin in society. I'm saying if he died for our sins and we still got all the sin to deal with, my nigga, what did he die for? Right? Did he get a bum deal? Because he took one hell of a hit. He had a blank check for humanity. And yet people still got to work this thing out all through life. That's what the whole life journey is about. What did he take the hit for? 1 Corinthians 10:8, warnings from Israel's past. Again, like we said yesterday, is an echo of what's considered to be the 50-year war, the Yom Kippur War. It started on October 6, 1973, right? And it echoes back to all of Israel's conflicts with its neighbors. That's what this whole book is about. So this is not nothing unprecedented, even for people who have adopted the identity of the Israelis, them too, right? If you coming under the name and the auspices of another people, you also are going to adopt the fate of those people and the history of them. So we're looking at that. 1 Corinthians, warnings from Israel's past. Do not be idolaters as some of them were, as it is written. The people sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry. We should not commit sexual immorality as some of them did. And in one day, 22,000 of them died. We should not test Christ as some of them did and were killed by snakes. 2 Corinthians 10:8, Paul's apostolic authority. You were looking at outward appearances. If anyone is confident that he belongs to Christ, he should remind himself that we belong to Christ just as much as he does. For even if I boast somewhat excessively about the authority the Lord gave us for building you up rather than tearing you down, I will not be ashamed. I do not want to seem to be trying to frighten you by my letters. I can relate. Hebrews 10:8. Christ's perfect sacrifice. Then I said, here I am. It is written about me in the scrolls. I have come to do your will, O God. In the passage above, he says, sacrifices and offerings, burnt offerings and sin offerings, you did not desire, nor did you delight in them, although they are offered according to the law. Then he adds, here I am. I have come to do your will. He takes away the first to establish the second, right? He takes away the first to establish the second. So what is he taking away? The first law is one that was consecrated in animal sacrifice. He comes with the new law to say, look, we're not dealing with that no more. I am going to be the human sacrifice for all sin offerings, right? I'm going to be the ultimate sacrifice, but one still has to ask, why is there still sin? Why are you still paying for sin on earth at that? Why are you still being born into sin? Right? Sacrifices and offerings, burnt offerings and sin offerings, you did not desire, nor did you delight in them. So who are they going to? And why did the people think that that's what their God wanted? Taking away the first law. I don't know what happened, but it just cut off on the Instagram. Why would that be a thing? You know what I'm saying? Let's do a cross reference to this. We could find this in Psalms 46. Sacrifice and offerings you did not desire, but my ears you have opened. Burnt offerings and sin offerings you did not require. So who are they going to? And what was prompting the priesthood to participate in animal and blood sacrifice if they didn't want it? And this is the very thing that has led to the latest skirmish in Israel, because they were attempting to do an animal sacrifice at the Temple Mount on October 5th. Recently, the other day, they was attempting to sacrifice a goat at the Temple Mount as part of one of their ancient rites and rituals. And then they got denied, right? And I also saw footage of them spitting on Christian tourists at the Temple Mount the other day. Jewish families, children first, and then the parents followed them. What's going on down there? They were spitting on them. So this world it seems to be in conflict with its traditions and its ceremonies and the things that it has done in its ancient times. They're clashing with modernity, with modern day things that people are, they too PC for this and they too PC for that. So they don't even want to allow people to practice what they've been doing for thousands of years. We're going to close with Revelations, the angel in the small scroll. But in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he is about to sound his trumpet, the mystery of God will be fulfilled, just as he proclaimed to his servants, the prophets. Then the voice that I had heard from heaven spoke to me again, saying, go, take the small scroll that lies open in the hand of the angel standing on the sea and on the land. And I went to the angel and said, give me the small scroll, take it and eat it. He said, it will make your stomach bitter, but in your mouth it will be as sweet as honey. So, we're going to end there with Revelations. In Revelations, okay. Let's see, you're going back. All right, we're just pulling this back up real quick on Instagram. Give me 1 second, y'all, because we just got the Instagram back. So I'll run through the last passage on IG before we close out. Yeah. Peace to the family. Let's just close out with this. Revelations 10:8. And it's titled The Angel in the Small Scroll. And, this is how we close it out. But in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he is about to sound his trumpet, the mystery of God will be fulfilled, just as he proclaimed to his servants, the prophets. Then the voice that I heard from heaven spoke to me again, saying, Go, take the small scroll that lies open in the hand of the angel standing on the sea and on the land. And I went to the angel and said, Give me the small scroll. Take it and eat it, he said. It will make your stomach bitter, but in your mouth it will be as sweet as honey. So, shout out to the seven energy. Again, we are in the season of Libra, the season of Mott and justice that is indicative of the number seven. Um, yeah, shout out to the powers of the seven. We are here on this seventh day, allegedly. You feel me? Yesterday, it will be considered a Black Sabbath. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that any of us celebrate the loss of life. I don't think that any of us celebrate death and destruction. You know what I mean? Instability on the planet is instability everywhere. You feel me? And again, I'm not excited or interested with seeing babies with their brains blown out on my timeline. And that seems to always be the trend anytime that Israel runs up in Palestine. For whatever reason, those lives, those children, those bodies, that graphic imagery, for whatever reason, is never flagged on my timeline. You know what I'm saying? So I don't look forward to seeing any of that. Um, but there are rumors of war, and you know, there's two contingencies on this planet that are consider themselves to be in all-out war right now. What we don't want that to do is we don't want that to spill over into, what I'm saying, something that is considered to be the beginning of a world war, because we're watching political theater or watching proxy forces at play, right? So behind the Hamas very well can be Iran and Russia, right? Especially with them acquiring all of this new technology overnight. All of a sudden, the new missiles and the drones and new tactical warfare techniques, they seem like they just came off a whole different battlefield. You know what I'm saying? And they were able to confound their enemies. They was able to catch them sleeping and lacking and slipping. You feel me? And they wild them up. I think there's always it's always mindful to pray for peace though. You know what I mean? And that would be my walking demonstration, because we was just having our conversations the other day about raising the vibration and being very mindful of conflict and toxicity, and I had to remind myself, right, in my own personal life, that certain things are not worth your peace, certain things are not worth your energy, certain things are not worth your engagement. But when it's on, it's on. You know what I mean? But you got to know the difference between the two. You know what I'm saying? And everything does not necessitate the response that is, you know, equal to war, all out war. You feel me? Where you're burning everything down and you're killing women and babies, either literally or figuratively. You got to be very mindful about the battles that you choose to engage in, you know what I'm saying, and what you give your energy to. So we do got to be mindful of higher vibrations on this planet, especially with the test that we went through last week. And ironically, and I should Google it to see if there's any facts to this, but somebody told me that Israel initially was supposed to be participating in the test run that they did last week with the emergency things that was happening on the phones. And then they said they backed out of it because they found out that it was going to be, you know what I mean, a little too intrusive. There's no country that's more intrusive than Israel, right? With its own citizens. They're the ones that own the technology that clones all of the data on the phone, right? They data mine everything that comes through your phone is ran through an Israeli company that, has created what's considered to be like spy hardware, allegedly. I gotta say alleged, you know what I'm saying? But nonetheless, you know, they're in the business of garnering large amounts of information on people. They're in the business of creating some of the most technologically advanced weaponry on the planet. You know what I mean? They're in the business of espionage. They're in the business of a lot of things. So as we come into this, like I said, this is the precedent that this sets is that last year this time, our good brother Kanye West was starting his tirade against, these people, right? Don't fall into this. Don't get into it. Avoid it as best as you can. It seems like a dragnet. You know what I'm saying? Don't fall into it. Don't get into that space and that place where you find yourself picking sides and things of that nature. Just observe what's going on and pray for peace because we do not want global war. We do not want all out war. Um, we don't want this country to go to war with Russia, right? You don't want that if it's going to impact you in a way in which, it's definitely going to hit you in your pockets, but you don't want your children being drafted and sent places that they don't belong, right? We don't need to see this again. We don't need our children dying for Israel specifically, you know? So, yes, again, just be mindful, protect your peace. This is this is leading into Scorpion season. So, we in adjacent months, winding down, right? Like I said, we got to find a way mentally to always take higher ground, especially these days, right? Protect your peace, pray for peace on this planet. You know what I'm saying? And I think that, yeah, that's all I got left. You feel me? And with that, I want to say peace, love, and light.
Peace, brother. Peace. Yeah, definitely. Watching the things in the world, 'cause we were talking about last time, the world events, it doesn't pack and everything's heating up. So,
Yes.
stay focused, be diligent in your efforts, and move a purpose.
Yeah. Yes.
Study the signs.
Yeah. Study the signs, study the times, move with purpose. And, it's worth having some knowledge of geopolitical affairs because they're definitely going to be impacting us going further. It's going to be a global conversation. There's going to be um, a reintroduction to scrutinizing domestic terrorism, but they're not going to look at the white domestic terrorists. They're going to go back to scrutinizing Islam and things of that nature. Um, they're going to make it a holy war. So just be very mindful. You know what I'm saying? Be very, very mindful of global affairs, but more importantly, protect your peace. You know what I mean? Harness your heart energy. Make sure that you're keeping a vibration around you that all time is going to magnetize positive outcomes. Don't fall victim to toxicity. Don't get in the mud and mudsling. You know what I'm saying? Find another way.
Indeed, indeed. God blessings, brother. Peace.
All right.
Be well. And be in tune, brother.
Yes, indeed, my brother. Peace. All right, y'all, to the stream. Appreciate you once again. Thank you for tapping in and joining us. Peace, love, and light. Shout out to my good brother, Red Pill. Shout out to KT, Mama Pill, everybody on the team. All right. Until we meet again. Peace.